stopped the speech. Alarm bells were ringing at the French intelligence center. Agent Sarah Collins was locked onto the computer screen. Traoré is saying very dangerous things. Cut the broadcast. How can we cut it? This is live. Any way possible. Cut the satellite connection, turn off the microphone. But a few minutes later, Sarah's face changed. What she saw on the screen shocked her. The person who turned off the microphone wasn't their agent. Instead, it was Traoré's biggest rival, former President Roch-Marc Kaboré. How is this possible? She murmured. Why is his greatest enemy protecting him? The roots of this shocking moment went back 3 days. At the National Television Building in Ouagadougou, preparations were being made for the year's most important speech. President Ibrahim Traoré would address the entire continent before the African Union Summit. This speech will be historic, Traoré told the production team. It will be a turning point not just for Burkina Faso, but for all of Africa. Television director Claude Compere was worried. Mr. President, the French will be watching this broadcast. If you say very harsh things. Claude, said Traoré determinedly, the time for fearing anyone is over. It's time to tell Africa's truths. French intelligence concerns. In Paris, at the crisis center located in the basement of the Élysée Palace, there was an extraordinary meeting. Foreign Minister Catherine Moreau, Africa Desk Director Laurent Dubois, and DGSE agent Sarah Collins were at the table. Traoré's speech is a bomb ready to explode, said Catherine. According to intelligence reports, he will announce complete withdrawal from the CFA franc system and severing all relations with France. Sarah Collins opened her file. Not just him. It said that 14 African countries are also preparing for the same decision. If this speech is broadcast, it could create a domino effect. Laurent summarized the situation. If Traoré speaks, our 50-year Africa policy will collapse. Can't we prevent the broadcast? Asked Catherine. It's live, going to all of Africa via satellite. Technically difficult. Not impossible, said Sarah. We can cut the satellite connection with a cyber attack. Or what? Local intervention. Operation at the broadcast center in Ouagadougou. Catherine thought. Very risky. Would create an international scandal. But Traoré's speech will create a bigger scandal, said Laurent. Unexpected development. At the same time, in a modest house in the outskirts of Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso's former president Roch-Marc Kaboré was watching television news. Overthrown by Traoré's coup in 2020, he now lived under house arrest with his family, his political career seemingly over. The house was simple but dignified, a reflection of a man who had once held the highest office in the land. Family photographs lined the walls, showing happier times when Kaboré had been the face of Burkina Faso's democracy. Now, at 65, he spent his days reading, reflecting, and watching his country navigate under new leadership. Kaboré's wife Sika came to his side, carrying 2 cups of traditional tea. She had stood by him through his rise to power, his presidency, and now his fall from grace. Mark, why are you always sad these days? Ibrahim overthrew you, but life continues. Sika, said Kaboré, taking a deep breath and accepting the tea with trembling hands. You can't understand the weight of what I'm seeing. Political rivalry is one thing. I can accept losing power, I can accept being replaced. But betraying the homeland is something entirely different. What do you mean? Sika sat beside him, her weathered face showing concern. Kaboré looked at Traoré's photo on the television screen, studying the young face that had replaced him. This boy is walking on a very dangerous path. He's completely antagonizing the French, cutting ties with our traditional partners, making enemies of people who have supported this country for decades. This could destroy not just him, but the entire nation. But you're his rival. He removed you from power. Wouldn't it be good for you if he fails and gets hurt? Kaboré turned to his wife, his eyes filled with a sadness she had rarely seen. Sika, I was president of Burkina Faso for 5 long years. I made mistakes, yes, but I loved this country before Ibrahim came to power, and I love it still. The people didn't change when leadership changed. The mothers still worry about feeding their children, the farmers still struggle with their crops, the students still dream of better futures. He stood up slowly, his joints aching from years of political stress, and walked to the window overlooking the city he had once governed. If Ibrahim takes a wrong step, if he pushes too hard, too fast, without understanding the consequences, millions of innocent people will suffer. The French won't just punish him. They'll punish the entire country. Economic sanctions, trade embargoes, political isolation. I've seen what happens to African leaders who bite the hand that feeds them. So what can you do? You're under house arrest. You have no power anymore." Traoré was quiet for a long moment, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. "Power isn't just about official positions, my dear. Sometimes the most important power is the power to prevent catastrophe, even when it means helping the person who destroyed your own life." That night Traoré couldn't sleep. He lay in bed thinking about the delicate balance of African politics, about the young man who had taken his place, and about the speech that could either liberate or destroy their beloved country. In the darkness of his bedroom, surrounded by the sound of a city at rest, a plan began to form in his mind. Speech day. Traoré woke up early on the morning of his historic speech. He looked at himself in the mirror, put on his red beret, straightened his uniform. Today he would voice not just Burkina Faso's, but all of Africa's concerns. His advisor Marcel came to his side. "President, the speech text is ready. But I'm asking one last time, are you really going to burn all bridges?" "Marcel, sometimes the only way to move forward is to cut off the paths back." "But the French." "I don't care what the French do. They've been exploiting us for 60 years. Enough is enough." When he arrived at the television studio, the technical team was doing final checks. Producer Claude was still worried. "Mr. President, are you thinking about what will happen after this speech?" "Claude, making history isn't easy, but someone has to do it." Final preparations in Paris. At the same time in Paris, Sarah Collins was having her final operational meeting with her team. "The plan is this," said Sarah. "When Traoré starts speaking, we'll wait for the first 5 minutes. If he starts saying dangerous things, we'll cut the broadcast with a cyber attack." "Do we have a local team?" asked Laurent. "We have 3 agents in Ouagadougou. But the risk of open intervention is very high." "What will we do in the worst-case scenario?" Sarah pointed to the screen. "Power outage, satellite jammer, or physical intervention." The speech begins. Evening at 8 p.m. All of Africa was waiting for Traoré in front of television screens. From Mali to Senegal, from Ghana to Niger, millions of people were preparing to watch the live broadcast. When Traoré took the stage, applause echoed in the studio. He approached the microphone, looked at the camera. "Dear people of Africa," he began. "Tonight I will tell you very important things." In Paris, Sarah Collins was watching the screen. "He hasn't said anything dangerous yet. We're waiting. Today, I will announce decisions that will change our continent's fate," said Traoré. Sarah tensed. "It's starting. The time has come to end Africa's 60-year exploitation," Traoré continued. "Alarm!" shouted Sarah. "He's entering dangerous territory." Critical moments. Traoré was reaching the real critical part of his speech. "Dear brothers and sisters, today I announce, Burkina Faso is completely withdrawing from the CFA franc system." There was panic in Paris. "Cut the broadcast. Immediately." Mali, Niger, Guinea, Togo, and Benin are also acting together with us. "Emergency. Start the cyber attack." But Traoré wasn't stopping. "We are also terminating all unfair agreements made with France." Sarah attacked the keyboard. "I'm cutting the satellite connection." And finally, Traoré was preparing to drop his biggest bomb. "I will reveal France's secret operations in Africa, their agent networks, their dirty business to the entire world." In Paris, Sarah went crazy. "Stop! Stop everything!" Just then, unexpected intervention. Someone entered through the studio's side door. He approached the stage with slow steps. Security guards recognized him and didn't intervene. It was Marc Traoré, Traoré's biggest rival, the former president. Traoré was surprised. "Rock? What are you doing here?" Traoré calmly walked to the microphone. "Ibrahim, stop." "What?" "Stop this speech." Everyone in the studio was shocked. Live on air, the former president was cutting off the current president's speech. In Paris, Sarah was watching the screen. "What's happening? What is Traoré doing?" Traoré reached for the microphone. "Ibrahim, you're going too far." "Rock, you're my enemy." "Why?" "Because we're both citizens of Burkina Faso." And Traoré pressed the microphone button. The sound was cut. The big shock. Millions of viewers were looking at their screens in amazement. Traoré's lips were moving, but there was no sound. In Paris, Sarah didn't understand. What happened? Did our system cut it? Laurent was confused. No, our attack hadn't started yet. Then who cut it? When they saw Traoré on screen, they understood. Incredible, said Sarah. Traoré's greatest enemy is protecting him. Behind the scenes, while the cameras were off, a historic conversation took place between Traoré and Traoré. The studio had erupted in chaos, producers running around trying to understand what had happened, technical staff checking equipment, and security personnel unsure whether to intervene in what appeared to be a political crisis unfolding live on national television. "Rock, have you completely lost your mind?" asked Traoré, his voice a mixture of anger and bewilderment. "You just took away my biggest opportunity. I was about to expose everything: their economic manipulation, their political interference, their military bases, their control over our currency. The whole world was listening." "Ibrahim, you don't understand," Traoré replied calmly, despite the chaos around them. "You're younger, more passionate, more willing to take risks. These qualities make you a powerful leader, but they also make you dangerous to yourself and to our country. I was president for 5 years. I sat across the table from French ministers, American ambassadors, Chinese officials. I know what these people are capable of when they feel threatened. So what do you suggest? That we remain their slaves forever? That we continue to let them steal our gold, control our currency, dictate our policies?" Traoré smiled, an expression that seemed strangely peaceful given the circumstances. "No, my young friend. But there's a difference between revolution and suicide. What you were about to do tonight would have been suicide. For you, for your government, and potentially for our entire nation." He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a thick manila folder, worn from years of handling. "What is this?" asked Traoré, his curiosity overcoming his anger. "This contains all the evidence I've collected over the last 20 years, not just about France, but about every major power that has interfered in African affairs. Banking records, communication intercepts, witness testimonies, photographs, documented meetings that were supposed to remain secret forever." Traoré opened the folder with trembling hands. What he saw inside made his eyes widen with shock. "Are these documents authentic?" "Every single page. And you will reveal them to the world. But at the right time, in the right way, with the right preparation. Tonight you were about to throw a hand grenade into a room full of people. What I'm offering you is a precisely targeted missile system." The two men looked at each other, former enemies, now potential allies, both carrying the weight of their nation's future on their shoulders. Around them, the studio continued its frantic activity, but for this moment, they existed in a bubble of shared understanding about the magnitude of what was at stake. Explaining the plan, Traoré pulled Traoré aside. "Ibrahim, with this speech you would have angered the French. Result: military intervention, economic embargo, even assassination attempts. So what's the alternative?" "Strategy. I cut your speech in half because the world will be curious. They'll wonder what was Traoré going to say." Traoré began to understand. The curiosity factor. "Exactly. Now the whole world has turned its attention to you. You'll speak again in a week. But this time you'll have brought not just France, but America, Britain, and China to the table." "How?" Traoré smiled. "Because the documents in this file concern not just France, but all the major powers." Great panic in Paris. There was an extraordinary meeting at the French intelligence center. "What was Traoré going to say?" asked Catherine Moreau. "We don't know," said Sarah. "But Traoré's intervention is very suspicious." "Why suspicious?" "Because Traoré and Traoré are enemies. Why would he protect him?" Laurent thought of a possibility. What if there's a secret agreement between them? What kind of agreement? If Traoré has information about us, and shared it with Traoré. Catherine's face went pale. That would be a disaster. The big revelation. A week later, Traoré was preparing to give his second speech. But this time Traoré was also with him. "Dear people of Africa," said Traoré. "My speech was cut short last week. I'm explaining the reason." The world paid attention. Because former President Traoré gave me very important documents. Documents showing Africa's real enemies. Traoré took the microphone. "These documents show the secret operations that not just France, but all colonial powers have conducted in Africa." Documents appeared on screen. CIA operations, British companies' bribery records, some of China's dirty business too. "As you can see," said Traoré, "the problem isn't just France. We will settle accounts with whoever exploits Africa." The Great Reconciliation. After the second speech, which had revealed corruption and manipulation by multiple world powers, Traoré and Traoré met privately in the presidential palace. The weight of what they had accomplished together was beginning to sink in. But so was the magnitude of the challenges that lay ahead. The palace, built during colonial times but transformed into a symbol of independence, seemed different now. The portraits of previous leaders on the walls looked down at these two men who had managed to bridge a political divide that had seemed impossible to cross. "Rock," said Traoré, pouring traditional tea for both of them in a gesture of respect that would have been unthinkable weeks earlier. "You saved me from making the biggest mistake of my political career. But I still don't fully understand why you did it. You could have let me destroy myself and regained power in the chaos that followed." Traoré accepted the tea with a slight nod of appreciation. The ritual of sharing tea was important in their culture. It represented trust, respect, and the willingness to spend time together as equals. "Ibrahim, let me tell you something about power that I learned during my 5 years as president." He paused, looking out the window at the city lights of Ouagadougou. "Real power isn't about sitting in this office or wearing the title of president. Real power is about having the ability to shape your country's future for the better, regardless of your official position. When I saw you about to make a speech that would have brought disaster upon our people, I realized I had a choice." "What choice?" "I could either let my personal resentment about losing power override my responsibility to our nation, or I could set aside my pride and do what was best for Burkina Faso. We too are political rivals. That will never change. We disagree on many policies, many approaches, many priorities. But we're both children of this soil, both products of this culture, both responsible to these people." Traoré set down his teacup, studying the older man's face. "So now what? How do we move forward from here?" "Now you continue being president, and you do it well. But you're not alone anymore. My experience, my knowledge, my network of contacts, both domestic and international, are at your disposal. Not because I support everything you do, but because I support Burkina Faso." Traoré extended his hand across the small table between them. "Partnership? Not friendship. I know there's too much history between us for that, but partnership for our country." Traoré looked at the extended hand for a long moment, then reached out and grasped it firmly. "Partnership for Burkina Faso." The end. 6 months later, there was a unique political arrangement in Burkina Faso that had never been seen before in the country's history. The current and former presidents were working together, sharing information, coordinating policies, and presenting a united front to the outside world. Traoré provided the energy, vision, and popular support that came with being the current leader. Traoré provided experience, diplomatic connections, and strategic wisdom that came from having navigated the complexities of African politics for decades. France and other world powers found themselves completely confused by this unexpected alliance. Their intelligence agencies had prepared for conflict between the two leaders, had developed strategies for exploiting their rivalry, had made plans to use one against the other. But cooperation between former enemies was something they hadn't anticipated and didn't know how to counter. "Ibrahim," said Traoré one evening as they reviewed intelligence reports together in the presidential office, "do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't turned off your microphone that night?" Traoré looked up from the documents he was studying, his face serious. "I would have made a catastrophic mistake that could have destroyed everything we've built since then. I would have spoken from anger instead of strategy, from passion instead of wisdom." "Thank you." "You're welcome. But remember, sometimes your greatest enemies are the people who save you from your biggest mistakes. And sometimes the most important speeches are the ones that are never finished." They returned to their work, two former rivals now united in service to their nation, their interrupted speech having accomplished more than any completed address ever could have.